Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm super excited to be here with you again. So, it's our Sunday webinar where we open a subject of psychology. So, today's subject is a very interesting subject because it is about neuro-linguistic programming and how it ties in with trading psychology and with us being traders. And overall, neuro-linguistic programming is a way of changing somebody's thoughts and behaviors to help them achieve desired outcomes. And that's essentially what we, of course, want to do for you. And in those sessions, to help you get better outcomes, to help you perform better in the markets. And neuro-linguistic programming wouldn't be as such brand new subject to you because we have discussed those theories and the underlying factors of the neuro-linguistic programming in our previous sessions. Because if you think about it, all trading psychology sessions somewhat are tied in together because it is all about our mind. It is all about our brains, interconnection with our bodies, biology, and our behaviors. So there will be components that kind of cross one and another theory, and neuro-linguistic programming is exactly doing that because it is all about what your mind can help you achieve, which essentially is the focus of all of our webinars and workshops, where we focus on your mind and your mind cultivating for you the skills and embracing the power that you have within yourself to get what you want to get in terms of your outcomes. So that's essentially what we are going to discuss. So just to recap, that if you are here for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome so much. If you are here again, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here. Today, we are going to go into the theory of the neuro-linguistic programming. I want you to understand what it is. I want you to understand the theory behind it. I want you to understand the application of it and different methods that can be used under the umbrella of neuro-linguistic programming. Okay. However, on Wednesday, where we have our workshop at 6 p.m. So for those, again, who are new here, on Sundays we do our webinars, and on Wednesdays we do our workshops. And this is where, in our workshops, we make it all more actionable. Okay, it's all more actionable, where we can actually put the theory that we have learned into action, especially in our trading. So that's precisely what we are going to do. So I'm going to throw a lot at you in this session in terms of what it means. So really take time to comprehend it, to understand it. And then on Wednesday, we can kind of sit down together and really go into the topic and relate it to you and the things that you will need to progress in your trading career. Now, I would say that this webinar ties in a little bit all of the webinars that we've done so far in some way. It's not done purposefully, but because of the subject and how this subject, again, covered up already so many different subjects that we have talked about, this is what it's going to feel like, that we're kind of rounding it up in terms of everything we have discussed so far and actually putting it into action. So every theory that we learned and every method that we learned, we can actually put into action here. So let's have it. So what is neuro-linguistic programming? I, of course, want to give you more content and definition for it. And the definition and application is where neuro-linguistic programming, and I'm going to refer to it as NLP, because neuro-linguistic programming is a bit of a mouthful. So that's how I'm going to refer to it. So NLP involves understanding and using language and thought patterns to influence your behavior. Okay, so in trading, this means that we can alter your internal dialogues and influence your risk taking and decision making. And if you think about it, that is the kind of key message in all of our webinars, that we wants you to understand the thought patterns that you're experiencing, the emotions that you're experiencing, what is happening with your brain, with your decision making on a psychological level, biological level, what is happening in terms of neurotransmitters in your brain. So then when you have that awareness and understanding, you can start implementing changes. So in terms of neurolinguistic programming, though, it's more specialized, and the foundation in history was developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. So if you would like to research them more, I will also tell you in our Discord chat what are their names, so you can perhaps go into further theory about it. But essentially, the neurolinguistic programming was based on the premise that there is a connection between neurological processes, language, and behavioral patterns. So it's kind of an addition to everything that we have spoken about in terms of, if you remember our previous sessions, it was all about understanding how our thought, how, when we experience trigger, that we have thought processing, emotion, and behavior. But here in NLP, there is a strong emphasis on the language that we actually use, and how many languages that you speak may also have an influence on how you understand things, how you process things. So bear with me, it's quite an interesting subject. Now, in terms of the evolution of NLP, because any kind of theory in psychology, in neuroscience, in any scientific subject, when the first theory comes about, it does get improved over time, and there is a development on it and off it when new studies come out, when people look more into it. So NLP is very much evolved through studying successful therapists and by studying good communicators, and its techniques. The techniques of NLP are actually very much used in fields like business, sports, and trading, because we always compare sport and trading, and this is where it can be very, very useful. So, for example, a trader may use NLP technique to change their internal narrative, and instead of saying to themselves, I always take bad trades, then they could start saying to themselves, each trade is a new opportunity to learn and improve. Now, I sound like a broken record, telling you all the time to pay attention how you refer to yourself, what is your internal dialogue, to control your narrative, to control how you interpret things, perceive things, because your interpretation and perception of things will have a huge impact on the way you understand them. The way you understand them will have an impact on whether you see them as opportunistic kind of situations or whether you see them as damaging situations, and that will dictate your behavior. And then we also discussed that behavior can have a domino effect where it can actually have a consequence for a longer period of time. So really, it is all about understanding of how language influences the thought and how the thought influences the decision making. And it is all rooted in a concept of linguistic relativity. Okay, so this is where there is a theory actually by Sapir-Whorf, where he would say that the language and the structure of the language that we use will affect your cognition. Your cognition is in your brain and how you understand things and process things. And that therefore will have an impact on your behavior. So there have been actually various studies on how language can influence your decision making and your cognitive processes. So, for example, those studies looked at how your language, whatever language that you might be speaking, will be affecting your risk perception, and how you will actually make rational or irrational decisions when you are faced with a problem. And then people who would speak foreign languages, so other languages to where the study taken place, that would kind of create a psychological distance sometimes from the emotional bias, because when speakers can speak multiple languages, they can detach themselves from the meaning. Now, there is also another bias. if you are bilingual speaker, and let's say the second language that you are speaking, you may not be so great at it as you are at your native language. And because the depth of that language and meaning is not there, therefore you are emotionally distancing yourself from certain things, so it's so interesting, and it's a very in-depth and specialized subject, because it really goes into dialogue. But the dialogue, it's not just a dialogue. That dialogue is fueled by different parts of our brain depending on which languages that we are speaking. Even the languages that you are speaking, and that is outside of trading, can have an impact on your color perception. Because if you are, let's say, native Russian speaker, they would distinguish colors and name colors differently to somebody who perhaps might be speaking English. It is on that level of depth. And because the language that you are speaking as your native language builds the depth into your brain and into your processing, that will have an impact on your decision making. And in terms of financial decision making, there was actually a study completed by Chen in 2013, and the study suggested that the structure of the language concerning the use of future tense, so how you will be thinking about your future, will have influence on your economic behaviors, and how much you are going to save. So it really is extremely interesting. And then, as I was doing my preparation for this session to talk with you about it, right, I was kind of thinking, okay, so what about let me do some research into multilingual individuals. And there is evidence that suggests that the language, which is a person that is bilingual or is speaking more than two languages, okay, they can actually, they thinking can have completely different effect, like I said, on the emotions and decisions. So for example, thinking in your second language or native language will have complete different impact on you. And just having that knowledge, and this is the reason why I always provide you with knowledge first that is not really related to nothing other than psychology, nothing other than studies, because I want you to understand the raw definition of that psychological subject. When you understand that raw definition of the psychological subject, this is where you can start kind of thinking, okay, how does it associate with me, with my trading, with my behaviors, with my way of thinking, with my way of interpreting things? And once you start understanding that, this is where things will become clearer. Now, just with a simple information, if you are bilingual individual or multilingual individual, you may think, okay, I've always been interpreting markets in my native language. Maybe if I am going to interpret them in my second language or third language, I am going to be more detached emotionally. Maybe there is a trick to it. Maybe that is something that would work. And this is where trading psychology and just trading in general is so unique to every single individual, because we are such complex individuals in terms of what we have experienced, how we process things, how we understand things. We have different stories, we have different histories, we have different, backgrounds in terms of where our families are from. Even if we're from the same place, our families would be bringing us up with different mindset and different way of living, and all of those factors stack up over the years. And as they stack up over the years, they will have an impact on the way we see the world. And the way we see the world sometimes has nothing to do with the way the world is, because it's our personal perception, it's our personal interpretation, which actually may have nothing to do with the facts sometimes. So again, the belief system kind of comes into play here as well. And that is something that will have a huge impact on the way we process things. So now let's talk about the core principles. And if you remember, and this is kind of what I showed you before, and I'm going to bring that drawing to the next session to recap it. But this is something that we've already discussed before, and we've discussed it in a way that you would receive the trigger, and that trigger, let's not relate it to the markets at the moment, is just from the external world, okay? And that trigger, whatever that may happen, whether that is a loss in the markets, whether that is something happening at work, relationship, whatever that might be, that will create an input into your brain. As it creates an input into your brain, we are going to create a roadmap how things get processed in your brain. Because then when you understand how things get processed in your brain, this is when you can start working out your own roadmap and your own way of processing things and understanding, oh, I remember Paulina said this, and this is actually happening to me right now. So the first access would be the neuro axis on a neurological level, which of course it's natural because that is how we process things. So we have the trigger, so whatever is going to happen in the external world, then we have the input and that moves into our first neuro axis. Our first neuro axis is actually, I'm going to surprise you here, internal images. So this is what you are going to experience, and this here is what is going to create that first interpretation. This is where, as I am going to explain this, is the neuro axis through internal images and through sounds and feelings creates that first input. Okay, now this shows you, especially with the internal images, okay, this shows you why manifesting is so powerful. Because if you think about it, and this is just in short, if you think about it, it's not about manifesting and visualizing the life that you want and hope that this life is going to just appear in front of you and is going to happen for you. This is the huge misinterpretation when it comes to social media and some of the coaches that are telling you, just manifest it and it shall turn up. It is not like that at all. The reason why you are manifesting is so you create new internal images, and those internal images will have an impact on your interpretation of the input that comes from the external world. If you think about it, let's say if you never experienced riches in your life, so, owning a Ferrari, a Porsche, a Lambo, you never sat in one, you never had one because you come from a working class family like most of us do, then how are you supposed to understand what you would feel like to sit in one, what you would be like to have one? This is why visualization, for example, helps, because then you are exposing your brain to the new stimulus, that's why vision boards work. This is why visualization work, because you are visualizing things you've never had before, but you are programming your brain into that new way of thinking and understanding things and making your brain more accessible to those things. Because if you never had them before, then how are you supposed to make it accessible? For your brain, then it's a big jump. But when you actually spend time on engraving that in your brain, this is where those things become a part of your neurological processing, and the internal images, the sounds, and the feelings will start being associated with it. Then, as the brain creates that input, remember the reason the brain creates the input is to create the output. Okay, and the output is, of course, your reaction, your response to the situation and what you are going to do next. However, before that happens, we've got the neurological path, and then from the neurological path, we've got the linguistic path. So this is the language that we use, okay? And this is where our conscious mind creates the description of the situation, okay? And this is where we've discussed it before, how your thought process, okay, and how you think about things, and therefore the way you think about things usually involves a language. As it as it involves the language, this is where the processing part comes into play, and the way that you understand things on your conscious in your conscious mind and your subconscious mind will have an impact how you are going to react, because in your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, there are two separate matters. Your conscious mind is something that, kind of knows what is happening right now. The subconscious mind is filled with those experiences that we mentioned that you will experience as a human being. And those experiences, those limiting beliefs, will have an impact on that processing. Okay. Now, as the brain goes through the input, the trigger, the neuroimaging, then into the linguistic. So let me just linguistic programming. So when you have the linguistic part and you've got that conscious and subconscious mind, and this is where the description of the situation happens in your brain. And this is the reason why we work on a subconscious mind to feed our conscious mind. So then our response to the external world is effective. But this is how afterwards, this is where the programming kind of comes into play. And this is where the behavioral response happens that creates the output. Okay. And this is all happening through the neurological filtering process. Now, in terms of the behavior, we are programmed in a certain way because there are different parts to it. There is the whole neurological part to it, but there are also habits, and there are things that you would do automatically when something happens. So you may be, and I already said it before in a habits webinar, that even if you use your phone and you put a certain application that you are using, let's say Discord, and you put it in the left corner of your phone, you will always just reach there without even thinking about it because it's engraved in your subconscious mind. Move that icon to another page, to a random place, and I assure you, for the first week, you'll be keep on clicking in the same spot, and you will forget that you have moved it. And this is exactly how the neurological processing works, and this is how things get engraved into our conscious and subconscious mind. Now, this is where what we want to do is we are wanting to focus on you understanding that process. And I appreciate the drawing is not the best. I will create you a map, like an actual image that you can see for you to understand how the input works, how the neurological processing works, linguistic processing, and how the output works. Because as much as we have, this drawing and understand it, this is where we actually have to understand each part of it. And we need to action each part to change the output and the behavior. Because we can't just take the world at the face value and our behaviors that there is an input trigger and there is an output and there is nothing void in between. No, there are a lot of things that are happening in between before the behavior happens, even though it all happens in a split second. From the moment there is a trigger, there is a behavior. It all happens just within few seconds. It doesn't matter. There is a process to it. And when we understand that process, and when we have awareness of our personal process and the flows of that process, this is where we can implement certain solutions. And that's precisely what I want to focus on now. Of course, we can't focus on everything in one session because here I want to really, for you to understand the theory behind things, really go into that theory, really understand how it all has an impact on you as a trader. And then on Wednesday, we can make it practical. We can make it practical and we can start putting things into place. So let's kind of make it now more trading related, okay? So let's say there is an input. And the input is, number one input is, so I'm going to number it so it's clearer for you, would be the sensory experience from what you see in the markets. So you see, hold on, I had to sneeze, sorry. So, you will see market, moving up or down, and you will see price, going into your stop loss. This is where your sensory system, your eyes are seeing what is happening, and that then has an access into your neuro processing, and this is the way your brain interprets the input, which can make it subjective because it is about you. Then the linguistic map comes into play, and this is where your language that you use describe the market condition and what has happened, and your personal perception will shape your biases. Because look, if you experience a stop loss, you're not the only trader to experience a stop loss. That is the input. Price went up, but then it went down, and it took your stop loss. Okay, and this is where that input will, through neural pathway, create an interpretation, but your interpretation, personal interpretation, will be based around the language that you use. So if you are unkind to yourself, if you always say, oh, I always lose, this always happens to me, the markets are against me, it's the market makers, it's the spreads, it's this or the other, you will create your personal perception of this situation. Because at the same time, around the world, traders might be experiencing the same loss as you, but they may be more relaxed about it. Okay, let's move on. Whereas you and your perception is going to be more dramatic, perhaps more negative. And that then is going to, of course, establish a pattern of a reaction. And that pattern of a reaction for you might be, let me put double position on now so I can make up for my losses. And you are programmed a certain way, and those patterns will repeat all the time until you realize they exist. And your job is to realize that there is a certain pattern that you go around, that you go around, that you go around, and it's your job to interrupt that pattern. So as always, it goes around, you put stop to it by changing that pattern, by slightly making an adjustment. As you slightly start making the adjustments, this is where your trading decisions will become different, and your decision making will become different too. So, for example, a trader may see a market moving into the stop loss. Stop loss is, one of the main reasons that traders do what they do. So they feel the fear, which is the neurological kind of response, and they describe it to themselves linguistically. So in terms of their language, this is a disaster, this is terrible. And then the programming is going to be, okay, so let's sell then. When traders just switch their bias around, and that will lead to another loss. That's the output. So the input is a loss. The experience, neurological experience, is the fear. Then your description of that situation, it's personal. And you say, this is terrible. No, I just lost 1%. No, you start panicking. And because of that panic, it will lead to an output, which is another trade, another loss, So this is something that obviously will have a huge impact for you. Now, let me tell you something about, let's say, a public speaker. And the reason why I'm using that is because I am a coach. So I'm actually publicly speaking right now. So for a public speaker, it could be receiving the agenda and noticing that the schedule of the session is in front of 5,000 people. Okay, so the initial feeling might be the nervousness and feeling a bit anxious, when you feel a bit anxious in your stomach, and that is that physical manifestation of anxiety. Then the linguistic map is the most important factor, if you have noticed, because you will experience the situation regardless. The situation is happening. Okay, so number one, the situation is happening. You either have to take a trade or you're a public speaker. Then the second one is the feeling. You will feel the fear. You will feel the sadness, the unhappiness, whatever. That may represent itself as a feeling in your brain and manifest in your body. And the interpretation of it, the language interpretation of it, is the break of that cycle that can change the trajectory of the next steps. So there are two ways. Public speaker, in front of 5,000 people, feeling the fear, okay? Feeling that anxiety in my stomach. What I can say is, I am terrified. Oh my God, I'm terrified. That way of labeling things is going to make me freak out even more. Whereas if I'm doing public speaking in front of 5,000 people and I experience that fear, do you know what I can do instead? Because I am still experiencing those butterflies in my stomach, I can say instead, I am feeling so excited about this. I'm so excited this situation is happening. And I'm actually going to let you in on my little secret. What do I say to you at the start of every session? If you have been here for a few times, you may know. If you're here for the first time, you may not know. I always say, I am so excited to be here. I would never say anything negative because, I got to the point in my career where I don't really get nervous, but I still have that protective system because I used to get nervous. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm so scared, I'm terrified, and making it worse for myself, I would say, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to deliver this topic for you. And notice any podcasts, any speeches, any stand-up comedy, this is what everybody says. I am so excited to be here with you guys. It's the figure of speech. So the point is here that the speaker number one and speaker number two are experiencing the same amounts of fear, but the way that you are going to interpret that fear for yourself, because that fear is already happening, whether you like it or not, it's there. And sometimes we can't control it. We can't. You just feel anxious, end of story. But what you do after is up to you. And this is where you are going to use it into your advantage. And as your power, you genuinely will empower yourself. And when you will say that you are excited, you will feel less and less nervous and you're going to perform well. However, if you are going to psych yourself up that everything's terrible, oh my God, I'm so scared. Oh my God, there are so many people. Oh my God, they're looking at me. Oh my God, if I'm going to forget what I'm going to talk about, then you potentially will forget what you're going to talk about. The same relates to trading. This is why I always repeat to you, emotions are there to give you signals. They give you signals to let you know what works, what doesn't work, what you are able to handle and what you are not able to handle in the markets. And that's okay, because if you use that data, it can help you to understand what you need to work on. Because perhaps you are feeling nervous about execution of a certain entry criteria, but that might be because you're not confident in that setup. And actually, instead of getting annoyed with yourself that you're experiencing anxiety or emotion, maybe think, why am I experiencing that anxiety and emotion? Oh, okay, I'm actually not that confident about that setup. I need to backtest it more. All right, okay, cool. As you do it, perhaps that emotion is going to lower. But then there will be some situations that you are confident about. And there are some situations that are backtested and forward tested, and everything should be fine. But that fear may still pop up. That's all right. It's about what you're going to do next. It's about your narrative about that situation. So if you're going to say to yourself consistently, oh my God, that stop loss was terrible. I took a stop loss. It's putting me further away from my dreams as a full-time trader of getting a payout. I am on minus now, so I am further from the target. So now instead of making 8%, I need to make 9%, or instead of making 8%, I need to make 12%. You're just going to make it so much worse for yourself. But if you say, okay, that's fine. If I'm able to make 8%, I can make 10%. If I'm able to make 5%, I can make 8%. It's fine. I can do this. It's an opportunity to grow. Okay, why was it a stop loss? Okay, did I execute this right? Yes, I did. Oh, cool. Fine. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. I'm not planning on retiring from trading within the next 2 weeks and making millions in the next 2 weeks. It's fine. I'm going to continue with that career anyway. I'm going to execute anyway. I'm going to sit in front of the charts anyway. So what difference does it make? Okay, no trade. Okay, move on to the next day. It's fine. You don't need to rush in one day, because I said it in the last webinar, I'm going to say it again. The markets don't expect from you to be right 100% of the time. You expect from you to be right 100% of the time. And this is why, because you are telling yourself that narrative to have to be right all the time. And because you're telling yourself this is what creates the pressure. Okay? So don't label it terrifying. Don't label it pressurizing. Label it for what it is, an opportunity. Okay? So let's say, let me give you now a trading example. Let's say you see price all of a sudden bouncing off some level, turning around, and the position is likely to hit your stop loss. And that's your input. The input is coming in. So then, what is the first neurological response? Feeling that rush of stress, an immediate impulse to try to recover that loss and think, oh my God, when that hot feeling goes through your body when the stress hits you. And then the linguistic programming, this is, remember, your gap. So again, let me just draw it out. So the input is that stop loss. And then immediately you are feeling stressed. Okay. Now this is your opportunity. This is your gap of control. What are you going to label it? You can think to yourself, oh my God, this is it. No, I'm done. I'm losing again. I'm going to be on a losing streak now. Or can you say, okay, it's a loss today. I'm going to analyze it later and find out why. And actually, the situation is not that bad. I can think it's very bad, but actually it's not. It's just a loss. And then whatever you are going to tell yourself, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to either go the highway or the bad way. You have your opportunity here to use your own language, to use your own power, to use your own ability, to use your own consciousness to decide what you are going to do next, to decide what is going to be the output and the outcome of the situation. And then once you do that, this is when you can think, all right, okay, instead of removing my stop loss or putting the next position, I'm just going to accept that loss and move on. And then you would just move on with your day, and the output would be, I'm not trading anymore today, and moving on to the next day. Whereas obviously, if you are going to take the bad way, it can have a very negative impact. Instead of it being one loss, it becomes -5 or 5%. And it's obviously something that you don't want. But this is where your linguistic programming, so the neuro part, is what already happens here, right? The input and the neurological stress that you are going to experience. But the linguistic part is what can save you. The linguistic part is what can make a difference. The linguistic part and what you tell yourself and how you label things and how you interpret things and how, because look, you might be actually interpreting things in a negative way at the moment, but that's why we're building that awareness and that framework for you, so you can change that narrative for yourself. And as you change that narrative for yourself from the self-sabotaging behaviors, you will actually start enhancing your behaviors and your performance in the markets. Okay, so there are two models of helping you to do that, and there is a meta model and there is a Milton model. Okay, and I'm going to explain them to you, but remember, this session is about explaining it to you and going into the theory and detail behind the theory. And on Wednesday, we actually are going to implement it. And we are going to put those things then into action and create studies of it, etc. So the meta model is essentially a challenge of distorted language. So essentially what we have discussed, that you have distorted language about certain way that you see things. So this is where we will change that language to help you clarify your thoughts and beliefs. And the example is that, again, you can think everything's always against me, to actually generalizing and reframing that way of thinking, that nothing is always against you. The world is not against you. The markets are not against you. The brokers are not against you. You actually have a great opportunity in front of you. The Milton model is more ambiguous, and it's more about metaphorical language, and it's all about the access to the subconscious mind and fostering your positive self-talk. So it is more about envisioning yourself as the navigator of your story, so and building your confidence. So I will explain it to you. So the Milton, the meta model, the meta model first, is about how you describe the situation that you are in. Okay. And this is how you describe yourself in that situation. So here you would be talking about the market is always against me, the brokers are always against me. And here you'll be talking about I am not good enough. I always take losses. You know, could be a better trader. I never finish things properly. I never do this. I never do that. So this one is about the positive self-talk, and this is about the situation that you are in and being able to actually see the situation for what it is, and having that more positive outlook on it. But if you think about it, both of those are focusing on the use of the language, and it's not about just empty use of the language. The more you use the language, at first you may not feel it, but then eventually it becomes part of you, part of your belief system, part of your processing, interpretation of things, and that's how things are going to change. Apologies. Let me go back to our previous slide. So here we are. So the meta model. So let me give you an example. So challenging, there might be a challenging situation, okay? And this is where you as a trader or just as a person, let's say in a workplace or whatever, you'll be upset about the feedback, you know, so the feedback from the markets. And the feedback from the market, let's say, is that stop loss. But the meta model would kind of look into what exactly is that feedback, what exactly about that feedback actually is upsetting you. So if you're feeling stressed because you took a loss, why? Why are you feeling upset that you took that loss? Like, you have to sometimes ask yourself those questions, because traders very, very often just kind of go with it and they're like, yeah, I'm annoyed and this and that. But why? Or let's say somebody at work gives you feedback and it upsets you. But what was about that feedback that has upset you? Was it not constructive? Was it the tone of voice of somebody? What was it? Okay. So that is like the challenging deletion of things. And then now let's look at the distortion, where someone, because if we think about it, and if you now think about modern communication, messaging, texting, Twitter, Instagram, etc., the information may be misinterpreted. Why? Because we all process things differently, and it's so easy to do that. So for instance, you may think, oh, this person ignored my ideas. And you could kind of ask yourself, let's say you are in a trading community and you're sharing trading ideas, and you have a trading idea that you feel like was ignored. But then you could ask yourself, well, how specifically was my idea actually ignored? What can you see what you are doing here? From jumping into conclusions and saying, I am not good enough. I don't like the feedback that the market has given me. I don't like how I'm not getting on with, people in my community. They're not listening to my trading idea. It's so easy to just get into our heads, but actually asking yourself a simple question saying, okay, you just ignored my trading idea, to actually thinking, but how have they actually ignored my trading idea? Oh, no, they haven't. It's just me thinking that they have. Okay. Then another thing is, like, when you say to yourself, I never win at trading, I never win a trade. And then you could question yourself, has there never really been a time that you have not taken a good trade? Because even if you are over trading and you're not trading according to your plan, and then people enter this victim mindset and say, the markets never gives me a break, I can never do this. But then you have to ask yourself, has there been a time that you actually haven't taken a winning trade? No, there has been a time. Okay, so what happened during that time? Because you should repeat more of what you've been doing before when you were taking those winning trades, and do that. Now we've got the meta model. In the meta model is more about, let's say someone's reluctant to start going to the gym and say, oh, exercising is too hard for me. And it is really about reframing it and asking what specifically is hard about that exercise. What is it? Are all exercises equally hard? What is it that is, stopping you from going where you want to go? So we will be going into all of those examples more and more and more and more during our workshop. And what I will do is I will ask some of you that usually come to the sessions, etc., to give me examples, to give me life examples, because I want to have live studies from you. I want you to message me and privately, because I don't want you to have to put yourself out there. And I want you to tell me about the limiting beliefs or negative self-talk that you experience. And as you are going to tell me what are the things that you are experiencing, it just can be a sentence. Maybe there is a paragraph. Doesn't matter. It's not about right or wrong, or you think, oh, is mine good enough? Just message me. And we're going to break those things down in terms of the meta model and Milton model, and in terms of providing you with that gap of control in terms of your linguistic programming and using your linguistic abilities to change your programming, to change your output. We may not be able to change the input because remember, what do I always say? There are some inputs that we will never be able to change. A stop loss in the markets, news, spreads, volatility, markets not moving at all because it's a holiday. There are some things we can't change, but we can always change our response. So even if now you are stuck in a certain pattern of responding to things in a certain way, good. Remember what that pattern is, and we're going to break it down and we're going to change it, because we are going to give you that gap of control where you linguistically can redirect your path with your mind, as always, but we're using your language as a tool to do that. And if you're multilingual or bilingual, you can do it in all languages. But this is where I really want to help you, because me giving empty examples is not going to be relatable. But when you will hear your own personal example, where of course I will not mention your names, I will keep your confidentiality, but you'll be able to hear it. You'll be like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. This is what I'm going to implement from now on. So that's what I will want us to very much focus on. And I want to show you what are the things that we are going to target with our meta model and Milton model, because of course I want you to just give me your negative self-talk and your limiting beliefs. Okay, that's the homework. If you feel comfortable, tell me about your limiting beliefs and tell me about your negative self-talk, and we are going to use both of those models to help you change that. All right, now of course we want to integrate neuro-linguistic programming into trading for enhanced performance. So what do we want? We want the trader to understand your own mindset. And this is why in every session, this is not just this session, we are creating that awareness and identification of what are the patterns, what are the thinking processes that you are experiencing, what are the problems. So I want you to think about it. I want you to think, what are the problems that you are experiencing in the markets, in life, with your timetable, with fitting trading around your work, around your commitments, around what you want to achieve out of trading. Maybe at the moment you think you can speed up the process by trading on 1 minute time frame, but actually the 1 minute time frame, even though it seems like it could speed up the things, it's actually slowing you down as a trader, because you could be way more successful on 15 minutes time frame. Those are the things that I want you to start understand about. What are the things that bother you? And until Wednesday, okay, I would encourage you to keep a track and journal your thoughts, your feelings, your trades. As the trade goes into drawdown, how do you feel? What do you say to yourself? What is your self-talk? Because you can see the second part here of the slide is communication and self-talk. How do you talk to yourself during those situations? When you get into a trade and it goes immediately into drawdown, what do you say to yourself internally? Are you kind? Are you reflective? Are you logical? Or are you quite emotional in a way that you actually criticize yourself? But drawdown is just normal. It's fine. But but we need to build the awareness, because the awareness is going to allow us to think, okay, this is happening. This is the signaling process. This is the input. How can we change the output? Because at the moment, the output is negative. But we need to understand that pattern. And once you understand that pattern, I can help you. And I can help you to build positive and productive narratives. Okay? Because if you are going to consistently build those challenging and unhelpful narratives for yourselves, this is where you will say, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not really that good at trading. I'm not good at doing challenges. You know, what makes you specifically say that? Why do you say you're not good at this? Why? And I want to encourage you and ask you those questions, because then I can show you that actually your beliefs have nothing to do with the reality of the situation. Your beliefs are making you think and feel like you cannot. But I will show you that you can, by just tweaking the language that you use, by tweaking how you say things, to tweak how you respond to things. That's why it's so important. And you know what? I sound like a broken record. I talk about this all the time in one way or another. But because it's so crucial. But instead of just talking about it and attaching it to other topics like we have so far, I wanted to make the topic of its own, for you to fully understand the in-depth, step-by-step process of your brain. That you have such insight into how your brain is programmed and how you can reframe things and thoughts through language. Because sometimes people will think, oh, how do I just reprogram myself? How? With the language. We are blessed to be able to communicate. And actually, majority of communication happens through body language, interestingly. But in terms of our own programming and in terms of our own communication with ourselves, it is the language that we use towards ourselves. But a lot of the time, people are not aware of what they are actually doing. And why I'm going to, the steps that we are going to take in the workshop is going to be obviously the awareness and identification, but I want you to do that up until Wednesday. And I am going to challenge your unhelpful narratives. And then I'm going to help you to reframe and reprogram yourselves. And then I'm going to teach you how to anchor yourself into positive states. So this is where you would evoke certain positive feeling, and there is a way of doing it. And we are going to work through continuous feedback and adjustments and continuously focus on the improvement. Now, I don't want you to think that something like that can happen over a week or a few days. I will actually write you down a roadmap for week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, and what you can expect and anticipate in each week. And perhaps we can do it together as a challenge in our trading psychology group on Discord. And this is where we are going to embrace week 1, and we will start with journaling and mindfulness. And that is going to be developed to understand and build awareness about our thoughts and emotions. In week number 2 and 3, we will implement questioning and reality testing to challenge negative beliefs identified in that journal. Then in week 4, we will introduce reframing techniques and develop personalized affirmations. Then in week 5, we will teach ourselves anchoring and visualization techniques. And finally, in week 6 and beyond, regular review and adjustment phase to consolidate the new patterns of thoughts and therefore better enhanced behaviors. So I'm going to message everybody after the session and say, well, and after Wednesday, because on Wednesday we actually are going to go through it as well. But this is where we could do it together. I'll do it with you. And we'll be like, right, guys, week 1, everybody remember, journal your thoughts and stay mindful throughout the day. As the trade is happening, journal your emotions. Have you journaled your emotions today? What were the emotions that you've experienced? Have you practiced mindfulness today? And mindfulness is not just meditating. You could just mindfully walk outside without any distractions, without headphones, without your phone, and just mindfully walk and hear the sounds around you and see things around you and not block your sensory system, but actually be present in a situation. And then in weekend 3, once we have done it, we'll be like, all right, I've recognized, and you don't have to share in public, but say, I've recognized so many of beliefs that I have about certain things. We're going to start challenging them and identify them in a journal and start actually questioning, why do I experience this? What is the reason? What is the evidence for that limiting belief that I've just experienced here? Oh, okay, not that much, nothing. All right, let's move on. Let's reframe it. All right, cool. And then we can, based on that, understand our own needs. And in week 4, start reframing things in our brains and start positively affirming ourselves and actually create linguistically that new reality in our brain. As you create that new reality, your whole processing, the neurological path processing, becomes different. All right? So that I've got big plans for this one, and I really hope that you guys will be with me. And this is what we are going to focus on again. Those slides here, integration into trading for enhanced performance, this is going to be the focus on Wednesday, where we go into every single detail and where I want details from you as well, so we can work through them together. And obviously, in integration, neuro-linguistic programming into trading, to increase our performance, is about behavioral patterns and, well, behavioral patterns in response to market reactions and emotional regulations through anchoring, because anchoring can really help us to evoke positive way of feeling, of emotions. When you are in a state of anxiety, you can actually trigger back feeling good. At the moment, you are actually experiencing anchoring without even knowing. But usually it's the negative one, because you will expose yourself to a certain situation, or you will put yourself in a position that you know that can potentially stress you out, and boom, that negative emotion is triggered. Whereas here we're going to do the opposite, the positive part, okay? And this is where, we will identify patterns, behavioral patterns that you may have. Like, are you overtrading after a loss? Because that would be fear-driven decision. So by using anchoring, we would associate after a loss a calm state with a specific stimulus that we are going to create, so that it keeps you balanced in a stressful situation and you feel calm. So, it could be something like using specific music to bring back down your emotion, to induce calmness after taking a loss or after putting a wrong position on, and actually that is going to calm you down. So it's a very interesting process in terms of anchoring, and this is where you would spend time, let's say, when you're feeling relaxed. I'm going to explain to you how anchoring works, okay? Imagine Sunday afternoon, morning, evening, or that time of the week, maybe Friday after work or Saturday, I don't know, whenever that might be, where you feel completely at bliss. There is nothing to do. You can just relax. You can either read a good book, watch a bit of TV, or just be on your own or scroll through your phone, and you put some nice music in the background and you're just like, wow, I'm relaxed. And some people would put fire up in their homes, or a sound of fire, whatever. And that makes them even more relaxed. Now, as you are feeling that state of relaxation where things are calm, things are good, you play a certain piece of music. Calming music, it could be classical, it could be whatever else. But that is the association of your state of calmness with that piece of music. The more you do it, the more your brain is going to associate the sound of that music with a state of relaxation. Then, when you're in a market, it's Wednesday, things are a bit hectic at work, and you are also trading, or maybe you just trading, trading is your full time job, and you take a loss, and then another loss, and then you take a third loss, and you're like, wow, I'm spinning out of control. This is where you start playing the music. And perhaps instead of playing it after the third loss, you take the first loss and you put that piece of music on that's associated with a state of relaxation. And this is going to have an effect on you and your body calming down in that situation. And that is going to bring the emotional regulation through anchoring. Okay, so that's what we are going to go into detail about. Now, goal setting and achievement. So we already discussed that in one of our very first sessions that I've done with you. And we talked about how goal setting is important because you have a roadmap to get into where you want to get to and set yourself milestones and little steps and little goals that you want to achieve. Because if you don't have that sense of achievement on a weekly basis, even, it could make you feel like you're not progressing and you're not moving forward. And that can be anxiety provoking. But if you have that roadmap, if you understand the little steps that you are taking to a bigger step, is going to help you. So this is where I want to encourage you to go back into setting yourself goals, smart goals, and kind of, the SMART goal, the S stands for a goal to be specific. So you should be clear about, what you want to achieve and set the direction for your efforts and for your focus. The goal should be measurable. So you should be able to take the measure whether you are progressing with your goal. So with trading, it is quite measurable, but I don't want you to only focus on your P&Ls. I want you to also focus on your performance as a trader, whether you are actually performing good in a market, not just based on trading outcome, but also in terms of you being a disciplined trader. The goals need to be achievable. So, it needs to be attainable to be successful. So, let's say you want to get funded account within a week, that's not quite achievable. It has to stay achievable. And obviously it has to be relevant and align with your objective, improved risk management or reducing, loss per day. So that would kind of, be relevant in terms of how you want to achieve your goal. So also eliminating things that don't serve you. And then time bound. You need to set yourself some type of milestones. Within 30 days, I want to achieve this. Within 60 days, I want to achieve this. But then now I don't want you to say within 30 days, I want to earn 8%. No, within 30 days, I want to be disciplined every single day. Within 30 days, I want to commit to our 6 weeks challenge on neuro-linguistic programming. Within next 6 weeks, I'm going to work hard on my risk management. Those are the things that I want you to think about rather than thinking within the next 2 weeks, I want to earn 8%. Okay, great. We all do. But how are you going to get there? What are you going to do? What are you going to implement in terms of your thoughts, in terms of your behaviors, in terms of your actions? What are you actually going to do? Everybody wants to get 8%, but it's about actually knowing what to do to get that 8%. Then what we are going to do further is we are going to reframe your setbacks. Okay, so this is again more what we spoke about at the start. It's about understanding that losses, for example, are opportunities, that short-term setbacks are long-term growth, that instead of dwelling on losses, it's better to analyze, to identify areas for improvement and adjust the strategy accordingly, or adjust yourself accordingly, or adjust your environment accordingly, or adjust your emotional responses and remove yourself from certain situations accordingly. So it is all about the cognitive reframing. It's all about what you're going to do after you're losing trade or winning trade. So the post-trading analysis. It's about the feedback loops. So kind of understanding the reflection process and have those reflection sessions. It's about, logging things and understanding things, not just on technical level, but personal level as well. That's why we have those sessions. And it's shifting focus to long-term growth, goal setting. What is that bigger goal that you're looking for? Progress tracking, mindset training, not trading. So goal setting, progress tracking, mindset training, educational and development, all of those things are the things that we need to focus on. And eventually, as we are going to implement all of those things, this is where the emotional memory is going to be different. We are going to actually recode the way that we understand things, the way we experience emotions, that it's not about experiencing or not experiencing emotions, is about regulating the intensity of the emotions. So at the moment when you feel anxious, you may be 10 out of 10. But once we implement the linguistic part, once we implement appropriate things for you to do to cope with the situation, eventually that feeling of anxiety will drop to 8 out of 10, to 7 out of 10, to 5 out of 10, to 4 out of 10. We're not looking to completely remove it. We're not meant to remove it. We are humans. We're meant to feel things. Anxiety is part of survival, actually, but it's all about being able to put cap on it and to be able to actually understand why those things are happening. So we are going to detach you from your past trading traumas, not kind of just focusing on what happened before, how many accounts were blown, whether you've lost funded account, not funded account. Clean slate, forget it. It was a great lesson. But now it's about moving forwards. It's about reframing things. It's about putting work into our mindset and remove that emotional trauma, emotional memory, and actually reframe it into something way more productive for yourself. Okay. So, guys, I am here at the end of the session, and all of those things that I just went through at the end. I wanted to give you an overview because I want you to understand what it is that we are going to talk about in terms of Wednesday. And I want you to think about it and kind of think, oh, wow, those things are helpful. But this is why I want to go in deep into actually applying it in terms of actionable efforts, actionable matters, actionable way of you thinking about things, reflecting about things. Because so far, I think it's been great what we have done in our webinars, new knowledge, new frameworks to work around, new ways of looking at things. But now it's about gathering all of that knowledge. It's about putting that knowledge together and effectively putting it into action, not just over 1 week, not just over 2 weeks, but over 6 weeks, let's say, and implement it to the best of your ability. So that's what I want to do. And that's what we are going to do on Wednesday. And I will potentially tomorrow morning, not today. I want you to go and relax. It's Sunday evening. Go and relax, watch something, prepare for next week, whatever. Tomorrow I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write out a plan of how I want us to engage, obviously in a Wednesday session in our workshop, but also beyond that in terms of our community on Discord, and how I want us to put things into action as a group, make ourselves accountable to one another. And I want to be part of it because I don't want to be the person that dictates to you, do this, do that. I want to do it with you because I told you from the start, I am so committed to my growth, and I've done all of those things before, but it will never ever harm me to do more of it. Doing things that are good for you, that are going to help you to emotionally, to psychologically, intellectually push yourself and grow and do things collectively and see each other grow is something that's extremely, extremely powerful and beautiful. And I want to be part of it with you guys. So that's what we are going to do. And I'm going to obviously highlight everything to you tomorrow, write out the plan, then you can reach out to me. You can give me a bit of your story in terms of your limiting belief, in terms of your negative self-talk, and we can reframe that together. And then I'm going to everything that I've mentioned in a second half, more on a surface level, where I've explained the theory behind it, where we haven't gone deep into it. That's what we are going to do on Wednesday. So guys, again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of you so much. I am so happy when I see positive messages from you. I am so happy that I can be a positive part of your trading journey in whatever shape or form. It really is my privilege. So thank you. And I will see you all on Wednesday. Have a fantastic Sunday evening. Take care. Bye-bye.